Beverage companies embrace recycling, until it costs them. They have pledged to help fix U.S. recycling, but for decades the companies have fought against bottle bills, which result in more bottles and cans being recycled but are costly for the industry. Recycling is in much of the United States, and companies like Coca-Cola say they are committed to fixing it. The beverage industry helps pay for pizza parties celebrating top elementary school recyclers and lends money to companies that process used plastic. Coca-Cola but one approach to recycling that many of these companies do not support has proved to actually work: container deposit laws.
Raindrop, truck top, smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.